Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the next episode of my series where I am watching every movie featured in Brian Raftery's book, Best Movie Year Ever. We are now on The Matrix. So, this is actually the second time I've watched The Matrix this year. I saw it in theaters when it was re-released back at the end of August, and then just watched it on DVD a couple nights ago. So we're going to be discussing The Matrix and things like that. Why I think the movie still holds up. The movie's still really good. When I saw it in the theater back in August, it was still quite amazing. Um, so just some notes here. The Matrix is in the dream world that they're in. Is I didn't really pick up on it so much the first or second time I had seen the movie, but it is super like gritty, super kind of dark and green. I knew it was green, but I think like going back through again, watching it back in August and then just now, how green the actual dream world of the Matrix is. It's also like very dull and kind of gritty. Like it's like when we see Neo at work, it's very cloudy outside. When they go back later in multiple times, you definitely just see the green tones of the Matrix, and it's definitely kind of meant to be like oppressive and kind of dark like that. Um, we then have our Agent Smith shows up fairly early into the movie. Really cool villain. I think they kind of in the second and third films they obviously weren't as good as the original, and they kind of made Smith's motivations a little bit weird in those two. But in this movie, he was just like a really cool villain. I still like him as a villain in the second and third movies, but not as much as in this movie. Um, Earlier on in the film, we get the slow mo Trinity kick, which I remember them kind of doing a parody of in the original Shrek. So that actually got a pretty good audience reaction when I rewatched it in August. Still a cool like visual trick. The movie is still very like visually like super stylistic. Again, and then we can't talk about the Matrix without the kind of like revolutionary visual effects at the time. So when they created bullet time and basically the visual effects for like all the other like interesting stuff. But bullet time being the big takeaway, the big thing that was super influential with this movie was that because many movies, video games after this came out started using bullet time. I remember seeing it. I think the first time I saw it after this movie was in Charlie's Angels, the original one from like 2000 with Charlie's. I almost say Charlie's Theron, Cameron Diaz, Drew Barrymore, and Lucy Liu. I remember it being there, and then of course being used prominently in the Max Payne video games, where you can kind of slow down time and kind of dodge bullets and things like that. They even mention in one of the voiceovers of Max Payne about in the cool action movies, you can, like bullets actually slow down, and there's like a gauge you can fill up in that game to do that, which is pretty cool. Um, I didn't notice this when I rewatched it, but in Neo's apartment in the early in the film, he's got his headphones on and they're playing music. And when he actually takes those headphones off, the music actually like cuts out. One issue I had with when I saw the movie again in theaters was I think it was in Dolby and it was just incredibly loud. So some of the more subtle like audio bits were kind of a little bit muffled just in with how loud other parts of the scene were. For example, I believe the song is called Spy Break. It's used in the lobby shootout. I noticed when I saw it in the theater that the music was very understated. It's still fairly like quiet in the DVD version as well, but all the sounds of like the guns being fired and like the columns crumbling really drowned it out that music. It was more noticeable when I watched it on DVD, but I did notice that certain audio bits in the theater were very understated just because everything else in the movie was so loud. But yeah, when he takes the headphones off, you hear it's playing a song, and then when he takes it off to when Trinity is talking to him through like the computer, it's all text just written on the screen. He takes the headphones off, and the audio stops. At least the audio on that on his headphones. I liked that his apartment is 101, so just a very basic like 101 binary, so like ones and zeros. Um, Reading something called similarium and simulation. I haven't really researched what that is, but I think it there is some importance there. But I didn't really bother looking what that was. Other stuff that was referenced here, we have like Alice in Wonderland being mentioned a couple times with the follow the white rabbit, and then when Morpheus is like like further down the rabbit hole, like you take this red pill and I can say how deep it goes, that kind of thing. The nightclub that they go to, so Neo and Trinity meet up at a nightclub. It reminded me of the nightclub in the original Terminator. I think it was called Tech Noir was the name of the club, and it was kind of like a club about the dark side of technology and just the visuals in the Matrix. So they were a little bit darker in the Matrix, but I remember basically in the Terminator movie, the original one, that club kind of had a similar kind of vibe to the club that's where they meet here. And then, of course, the big question is, what is the Matrix? Obviously, again, when it cuts back to the when he's still in the real world, when he goes to work, it's just very the cubicles are very like very basic. The office, like the windows outside, like the entire like it's like a overcast day, and it's just very kind of gloomy. Speaking of office jobs, this is I think the second movie I've seen this year or in this series where it has to deal with office work. So there's Office Space, then there's this. 1999 was also just big on characters working in an office, even though in the Matrix it's really kind of like a very small part of that film. But so we have Office Space, we have this, we have Fight Club where Brad or not Brad Pitt, or Edward Norton works as like an insurance adjuster at an office. It has a lot of office work to do, and then American Beauty, Kevin Spacey like working in an office as well. That was just like a little nice little observation I noticed. I like basically Neo kind of like goes through his training and initially fails, just all kind of part of the hero's journey kind of thing. When he meets, I mean, fails as in getting out of the building because he was like supposed to climb out onto the scaffolding, and Morpheus is like, "There's only two ways out of this building, either that scaffolding or in the custody of the agents." And of course, it cuts to him being escorted out by the agents because he just can't do it at that time. They interrogate Neo, or they're trying to make Neo an offer. They're like, "Hey, we'll erase all your criminal records if you help us track down Morpheus." And Keanu Reeves and Neo is like, "Hey, give me my phone call." And Smith says something to the lines of, "What good is a phone call if you can't speak?" And then Neo's mouth is kind of like welded shut, basically. And then he gets bugged. He wakes up, thinks it's a dream. It's not a dream. He later meets up with Trinity, Switch, and APOC, and they pull the bug out of him and get rid of it. And then he meets Morpheus. What else he got here? So he meets up with Morpheus, decides to take the red pill, gets basically decoupled from the Matrix. I think it's like that pill. I believe basically it might trick the power generating plant that they're in to thinking that they're dead when they're really not, and then they can just swoop in and grab whoever that they need to pick up because they basically just know where the red pill is also part of the trace program, so they can kind of trace where in maybe what power plant and what like pod he's in, and then just track him once they dump him through like that water slide thing. So he gets picked up by them. Like there's like definitely a lot of like very philosophical kind of questions here, like what is real, what is not real. Like is this notebook I'm looking at, is it real? I can feel it, but that's just because my mind makes it real. So it was like a really kind of cool philosophical film. When I was in my senior year of high school, this is when this came out. Of course, I think I mentioned it in the first video for the series that I wasn't able to actually see it in the theaters initially, and first time I saw it was on DVD. But my film teacher in high school really liked the movie and said that if she could do it, if like logistically it would work, she wanted to take our class to actually see it. But that would, of course, that never happened, just because I think there was like a lot of logistics to be like, well, this movie is hour and a half, like or over 2 hours long. It would cut into like their lunch period as well as like their other classes. So that's probably why we were never able to actually do it. But that was cool because she really liked that film. Basically Neo gets told what the Matrix is, that it's basically the world that's been pulled over your eyes to blind you from the truth that the world is basically like gone at this point. There's like only one city left. It's deep underground. These machines are basically harvesting humans for their energy through like thermal energy as well as like active like energy from their brain, like brain energy and stuff like that. So their power source is basically they're growing humans and farming them for energy, basically. He gets removed. We also get a Wizard of Oz reference where I think Scyther says something like, "We're not in Kansas anymore." So there's some definitely other film and literary references, like such as Alice in Wonderland. Basically, they show the power plants where there's just hundreds, if not thousands, of these pods just on there. What's this? Neo makes a comment about his eyes. He's like, "What's wrong with my eyes?" And Morpheus is like, "Well, you've never had to use them before because you've been in this power plant this entire time." Again, the film, it was released in 1999. The Matrix, the Dream World, is a copy of that time period, but Morpheus basically says it's basically 100 years past that, so it's actually closer to 2199. And then we get on the Nebuchadnezzar, which is Morpheus's ship, which was I paused it on the plaque, was built in 2069. Yeah, basically people are farmed for their energy. There's the construct, which in when they get into the construct in the theater, it was like super blinding because it's very like bright in there because it's like a loading program. It kind of actually hurt my eyes a little bit because of how bright the scene was, and I saw it in it was Dolby like it wasn't IMAX, but it was like the theaters like I think second like premiere like format is Dolby. They also have IMAX. Um, we have the thing called residual self image, which is basically what Morpheus describes as the mental projection of your digital self. So when they're in the construct, Morpheus and Neo are presented in the way that they basically see themselves. Like Morpheus or Neo in this is Morpheus is bald regardless, but Neo in this case, in the real world, when he gets pulled out, has no hair, but he does have the same hair he had when he was in the Matrix when he is in this construct, and whenever he goes back into the Matrix, it's that digital self image or that residual self image stuff, and then we get back into the what is real thing. So let's see. Basically, Morpheus goes through like the history of like what happened. He said like we created AI. There was a war between the AI and the humans. The humans basically tried to blot out the sun to stop the AI robots were basically solar powered at that point. So they decided to basically I think Morpheus describes it as like scorching the sky or something like that, where basically there's like maybe like a nuclear bomb gets detonated in atmosphere and causes basically all these clouds to constantly be around, which makes it so the AI can't get the energy from the sun. So then the AI just turns to harvesting humans, which is more than enough energy for what they need. Basically, there's the whole thing about the One, which Neo is prophesized to be, and the One can basically change the Matrix, or the original version of the One was able to change the Matrix as they saw fit, so they can basically kind of control it from within, I suppose. Um, we have we have Zion. We meet Dozer and Tank, who are actually real humans. They're not grown in these power plants, so they don't have any of the kind of like holes or like brain connectors or anything like that Neo, Trinity, and Morpheus have, which also means that they can't go into the Matrix. But they may not even want to do that at that point. We get into the whole training montage, which is and some really cool like kung fu fighting scenes here. One line from Morpheus, which I really liked, was "Don't think you are, know you are." Like, know you're capable of doing these things and all that. They loaded the jump program. The jump program is basically Neo sees Morpheus jump from one large building across the street to another. That's where the entire like the whoa thing came from because Neo's just like whoa like that. He fails it, but they basically say everybody fails the jump on their first time. Neo is bleeding after this, so he's like, "Hey, I thought you said this wasn't real." And Morpheus is like, "Well, like your brain thinks it's real, so the pain ends up being real because your mind makes it real. And then again, if you die in the Matrix, you actually die in real life because Morpheus says the body can't exist without the mind." Um, he also says the Matrix is the enemy. And one thing I never really got was they go through this other training program. This is the Woman in the Red Dress program, where you see people walking around. People that like I think some of them are programmed, some of them maybe are not programmed, some of them are probably other people that are like connected to the Matrix as well. But the thing with agents is agents can basically hijack, I think, like any person at any time to do what they need to do. There's a couple times, like later in the film, where Trinity shoots an agent in the head, when that agent basically dies, it reverts back to whatever either program or person it was before the agent had switched its position, switched with it. So it was a helicopter pilot. It became an agent. Trinity shot it in the head, and then went back to being the helicopter pilot. So it looks like the agents can, like basically copy their programming into other programs and or people, and then take them over at the same time. Basically, we get the whole thing with the Sentinels and the EMP. It's kind of like the only weapon they have against them. But of course, it means that the entire power to the ship has to be turned off, so you can't be using the Matrix at the time, which we see in the end, where they're getting ready to fire the EMP. But they're like, well, we gotta wait for Neo to get out of there because he obviously, if we do his EMP when he's in there, it'll basically kill him because you do have to basically disconnect from the matrix before you're able to like actually unplug, which we see later with Scyther when he murders two of the other shipmates by basically just like prematurely unplugging them without them actually like disconnecting from it. Yeah, Cypher talks to Neo. We have a whole talk here about he's like, I should have taken the blue pill. We then cut to him having dinner with Agent Smith, being like, you know what? I would rather just be back in the Matrix. I'll give you. I don't have the codes to Zion, but I'll give you Morpheus, and he has those codes. And he basically says ignorance is bliss, which kind of reminds me of a scene or the bit in Shawshank Redemption where the one prisoner, gets out of prison and he's been in prison so long that he doesn't know how to function in the real world. So that kind of reminded me of Cypher, where he was just like, I want to go back to what he's like. I want you to wipe my memory of all this real world stuff and just put me back in the Matrix. And that's what they agree to do. And he basically is kind of like turning on the group at this time at this point. They go back in. This is basically when they're meeting up, getting ready to meet up with the Oracle. They go into the Oracle, and a lot of the stuff that which was interesting was Neo walks in there and she's like, "Don't worry about that vase," and he's like, "What vase?" He knocks it over, and then she says, "The real interesting thing here is, would you still have broken that vase even if I didn't tell you that you were good that not to worry about the vase?" He also talks to the kid that has the spoons. This kid is bending spoons of his mind, but the kid is like, there is no spoon. It's really you that is shifting. So that's basically, I think, showing that the spoon isn't there because it's obviously a digital, like you're in the matrix and nothing is really real. And you're just kind of changing your perspective a little bit, and then the spoon bends. Something like that. Kind of like eventually how Neo basically can kind of control certain aspects of the Matrix. Like when the agents shoot at him at the end of the movie, he's able to actually like interact with their programming and stop those bullets from actually like flying in and hitting him. We get the ambush by the agents and the whole deja vu thing where he's like, "Hey, deja vu! I just saw that cat walk by twice," and they're like, "Well, deja vu is a bad thing because it probably means that the agents have switched something up in the programming, which means that we're probably going to be in trouble." Cypher gets out of the Matrix and he kills Dozer. We think he kills Tank. Ends up Tank not being dead, but Cypher. This is when Cypher unplugs both APOC and Switch. Kind of tells Trinity he's going to unplug Neo, but then Tank picks up the energy cannon and fires it at him, killing him and then getting the rest of them out of the Matrix. But at this point, Morpheus has been captured by the agents and is being held in some kind of large building. We don't know exactly what the use of that building is. It's probably like a government building or something. Being held there, hooked to these machines, basically to try to crack into his mind to get the mainframe codes for Zion, basically to probably like go in and send like an invading fleet of Sentinels and other things into Zion to basically wipe it out. Edith Smith basically says we created the original Matrix. It was supposed to be like the perfect world, but people like rejected it because it was like too perfect, basically, or there wasn't like it was basically like a utopia, and that really can't exist. So humans apparently love misery, so that's why they reprogrammed the Matrix to look to be in the real world, and so it basically so there is still, like there is still crime in the Matrix. There's still people that are like probably like committing murders and stuff like that in the Matrix, but it's more, I guess it's more normal to live in a world like that than live in a world where nothing like that happens. I'm not really sure. I think that's the kind of message they were going with there. So he basically gets a history lesson on the Matrix. Tank wants to actually like basically just like unplug Morpheus. So basically Morpheus has the codes to Zion. If he's unplugged, the agents won't be able to get them. but the Oracle had told me Neo about something. He's like, it's either going to be your life or his life, and then he was just like, I had the Oracle told me about this choice I had, where I'm now going to go in there and um, rescue Morpheus, and basically told Trinity that he wasn't the one. I think the Oracle probably knew that he was, but couldn't just overtly say that he was. I think he kind of had to earn that by having these trials and tribulations and eventually like discovering his power kind of thing. So they go in. Um, Neo originally doesn't want Trinity to go, but Trinity's like, I'm the highest ranking officer on the ship now. I'm going regardless. So they go in. Um, yeah, they go back in. Smith, there's this whole interesting thing where he basically describes humans as a virus, and Smith even says, I'm tired of being in this world. I like just give me the access codes. I'll basically like get everything, and then I can move on and do something else. They do more of that in the sequels, but it was just kind of like an interesting discussion where he's actually, even as an AI program, he is kind of growing tired of his job, which is basically policing this this fake dream world. We get the lobby shootout. It's still a really cool scene. Seeing it in Dolby was really cool, even though I mentioned earlier the music that plays was kind of drowned out by all the gunfire, but it was still a really cool scene. We get the elevator. We get the elevator scene where they're in the elevator, basically plant a bomb in there, and when it hits the ground floor, it just detonates. And I like that the fire like really slowly comes out of the elevator because, of course, it's like a digital thing, so it's like slowly burning out this bottom level of this building. Smith doesn't know about what's going down because at this time he had taken his headpiece out and was talking to Morpheus, and the two other agents they're like, hey, we got a problem. They're like, oh yeah, he doesn't know what's going on because he took his headpiece out. We get the rooftop scene here. This is where we see the bullet time. So we see an agent basically possess the body of a helicopter pilot. That agent comes out, and Smith or Neo basically pulls guns on him, fires, and you get the whole thing where the agent is able to basically just dodge all these bullets, and then fire on Neo, who's able to also dodge the bullets. He does get grazed by a couple of them. And even Trinity's like, I've never seen anybody move that fast. And Neo's like, well, I didn't move fast enough because I got grazed back there. Trinity then sees the helicopter. She's like, hey, I need a piloting program for this helicopter. Tank loads it up. They go and rescue Morpheus. And then, see, like the Oracle told Neo, I think he's like, the Oracle just told you what you needed to hear. I think that's after the Morpheus rescue. And then after that, Trinity gets out, Morpheus gets out, but Neo is not able to get out. And this is what we see. We have Smith versus Neo. This is just a really cool fight. It's in the subway. We have some really cool kung fu here. Some like more uh, bullet time kind of stuff, slow motion effects. What's this? And then the throwback to when he's fighting Morpheus is Morpheus does the whole thing where it's almost like the Rock when the Rock would wrestle. He'd be like, I can position the camera here, like do that. He's just like that. So we get that whole scene, and then the Sentinels are also approaching. So Neo is fighting while Neo is fighting Smith. The Sentinels are also on their approach to basically wipe out the Nebuchadnezzar. This will also basically wipe out Neo, Trinity, anybody on that ship, and then the human resistance or just the human race in general will have much less resources. They won't have the one on their side anymore because they'll be gone. But Trinity told Neo that basically everything has happened that the Oracle has told her except for one thing, which is basically that she was going to fall in love with the one. Neo does get killed, but kind of comes back to life basically. And then the agents, all fire on him. He stops the bullets, like just puts his hands up, stops all the bullets. They just fall out of the air, and then we get Smith diving into Neo and basically Neo or Smith basically exploding with Neo coming back, and then the other two agents just run. And then Neo is seeing the world, or at least in this one instance, seeing the world in green. Like I think that implies that he is seeing the Matrix, like the actual like coding of the Matrix, and then can manipulate that coding to whatever he needs it to be. Yeah, because seeing code, we get so there's basically no whatever there. Smith explodes. Yeah, another thing with the fight is that Smith runs back up to him and just starts fighting him, and Neo is just at this point like it's almost like nonchalantly just like blocking every punch and kick. He's just like like being very kind of slow, and then Smith dives into him, explodes. The ending, we have Neo basically on the phone telling like the people that are like actually in charge of the Matrix of what's going to happen. He's like, hey, I'm going to wake these people up. They're gonna, we're gonna move on. We're gonna do this. We're gonna do that. And then we get the amazing Raids Against the Machine ending where Neo steps out of the phone booth to wake up, playing by Raids Against the Machine, and then he looks up, flies away, and right when I think like one of like the breakdowns in the song happens right when the credits start. It's just like a really cool way to start your credit sequence with just like that awesome song. Another interesting thing is when Neo is looking up at the sky, he's no longer wearing reflective lenses. So the glasses and everybody wears, like Morpheus wears them, Trinity wears them, Neo wears them. They're all reflective. You generally can't see their eyes. And in the book that in the best movie year ever, there's a bit in the Matrix chapter where they talk about the costume design, where the costume designer was basically quoted as saying, "If we don't want you to see the character's eyes, like everything here was done purposely. So all the lens shots where we don't want to see their eyes during this segment of the movie, but when we do, we'll switch out the lenses because then Neo is wearing non-reflective lenses. You can actually see his eyes in this case, and then flies away, and credits start." And that is The Matrix. Still a really amazing film. Again, never got to see it back in 1999 when it came out. I'm not sure exactly what happened, but it was playing on a theater that was on the other side of the county. I don't think the local independent theater in town was showing it, but was really glad that I was able to actually go out and see the 20th anniversary re-release, and then enjoy it again on DVD just a few nights ago. So The Matrix is still a really cool movie. Really has a lot that people are still talking about. A lot of really cool, like philosophical kind of things, maybe even like somewhat religious things that happen in the movie. Like Neo can be seen as like a Jesus kind of like analogy, and even one of the characters in the film, in the beginning of the film, when Neo is giving him some software, like I don't know exactly what the guy is using it for, but he's like, yeah, you're my personal Jesus Christ kind of thing. So I think that was definitely purposeful. So The Matrix still definitely holds up, still is really amazing. If you can check it out, I think it's on Hulu right now. It was on Amazon for a while, but I don't think it's on there anymore. So I think it's on Hulu, but I ended up watching it on DVD as well as theatrically a few months ago. That's going to do it for this episode. Next movie up is going to be Varsity Blues. I've seen that before. I've only seen it once. It's probably been like 8 or 9, maybe even 10 years since I've seen it. I remember enjoying it, but that is on Amazon Prime. I'm going to start watching that probably in the next like day or two, and we'll get a video up for that as soon as possible. So again, next movie up is Varsity Blues. That's going to do it for this episode. Remember to like, comment, share, and subscribe, and we'll see you next time. Thanks again for watching.